John Antos and my friend Jim Brimson. We would like to welcome you back to our series on business process management, where we've been discussing the 4 laws of process laws. And now we're talking about corollary 4B here, where we're talking about this relationship between processes, polarity, and equilibrium. So Jim, what is that all about?
The best way to think about it is if you had a magnet and I have two opposite trying to pull them together, they naturally pull apart. However, what you can do is eventually get them to touch if you really want to apply the pressure to make those opposite polarities work together. Now, where this is really critical is equilibrium can be established by putting extra force of pulling two magnets together, but it's not going to be a permanent one. It's going to break apart the moment those forces have done. On the other hand, if you turn the magnet around and had opposite polarity, then they tend to attract each other, and you have a more permanent attraction without the use of force. Now, where all this is critical is what we often talk about as the human factors of business. What are the factors that cause certain techniques to be very successful and others to have very mixed results? Ron?
So, for example, here, Jim, we talk about these natural factors, and if you look at our slide, we have things like complexity, and we have, is the data available, is it clean data, is it accurate data, we have human contentment, so if they're, the union employees are about to go on strike, they're probably not very content, and even though they may not do something purposely, just the fact that they're all upset, or if there's going to be a major layoff, all of those factors can affect our processes.
Absolutely. And by the way, this is just a partial list. The actual list is much longer. It's things also like distance. You know, clearly the closer the distance, the easier to have positive attraction. The longer the distance, it makes it much more difficult. So there's many other factors that are not addressed here. But the key idea is that if we build our management systems, and they are very complex, that in most cases, once the forces that try to pull these together are not used or abandoned, then at that point they're going to split apart and you're going to drop the actual program. And we have several examples that we want to talk about.
So the whole keep it simple, silly that we talked about in many parts of life applies here to processes as well as to our everyday life.
Yes, not only they apply, but they're critical. And let me use this as an example to illustrate what we're talking about. I've got a good friend in the Navy who was talking about this example, and so his name's John. And it's really a classic example of these forces that I was talking about. First of all, you have what we'll call the positive binding forces and the negative binding forces. Again, the positive binding force would be simplicity, the negative would be complexity. So, what John talked about was 3 examples that they tried to apply. The first one was activity-based costing. And what he found is that in activity-based costing, there was a lot of data collection and understanding what people did, who did what. And there was a lot of analytics that came out of ABC. They produced a lot of reports and different ideas of ABC. What there was very little of was action. So people got a lot of data, but it didn't really lead them directly to take the right action. And it's only when we get the triangulation of these 3 factors, where we have the right data, we're doing the right analytics, and we're really taking the right action, will we create value. So what John talked about was this bonded these two, but only because there was a champion. Now, once the champion left, the factors that the ABC was too complex, that most people didn't see much value out of it, there's very little commitment on the part of people. Factors like that caused the ABC project to fail. So the moment the champion, which was that bonding factor, left, they lost that, and the natural bonding, negative bonding, pulled them apart, and they abandoned it.
Well, do you think in business process management we have positive bonding or negative bonding?
Well, what we're trying to do at this point is understand bonding. So right now, the answer is not that we're going to give you the solutions. That will definitely come from it.
Okay.
But if we don't understand the problems, we'll never properly solve it.
Correct.
Another example that John talked about was they implemented a Lean Six Sigma. There, they trained people to be black belts, and lots of training, and they sent them out to different parts of the organization, and they quite often led to actions. They'd go into an organization and make changes. The problem was, again, the moment that champion, which was the bonding force between that, left, that, again, they pulled apart because it was not the human part of commitment. They don't like to see disruption. They like a nice, stable environment. They don't want to constantly be changing what they do. Also, there was never an ongoing data system to support it. It was just a team that would go out and do this. So it failed the total, intersection that we're searching for value creation. And again, once they abandoned it, it fell into disuse. The third example he gave was one of improvement programs. And there what they found was there was a data source, that they actually did variance analysis and other sorts of data to support it. The problem was that they would look at that and then go and take an action. They didn't do the proper analytics to do perhaps the root cause analysis and many other factors that went into it. And he felt that it did directly lead to action, but there was improper analytics to really support it. So those were three examples of projects and why these bonding factors are so important. Because again, once the person that was pushing for the improvement projects, stopped championing it, then of course people went back to their comfort level. And the comfort level is not to be optimal. It's to be where no one's yelling at you almost.
I understand that. Well, let's move on to this last corollary 4C, where we talk about if the goal is maximum efficiency and effectiveness to be in equilibrium, or can we accept something less than maximum effectiveness and efficiency?
Yes. Equilibrium rarely is going to have maximum efficiency and effectiveness. Equilibrium is getting to the point where things operate to the point of no major problems. So if we consider something like, again, our payroll example from the last tape, where if people are not getting their checks on time, if the people are not getting paid the right amount, they'll be very quick to call up the managers and their managers and everybody else, and there is no equilibrium. There's a constant state of flux in trying to fix things. So if you simply solve that problem, you'll achieve equilibrium. Well, the problem that becomes that does not necessarily mean that that's maximum efficiency, that you're doing your payroll process with maximum efficiency. That takes a whole different force and bonding characteristics to do it. So the bottom line of this is much of our economic and other theories really delves around profit maximization. And the reality of what this corollary says is there is no such thing as process maximization, profit maximization. So the key is what we have to evolve is to a very different management system in the future, one that deals with value creation rather than profit maximization. Because profit maximization, the concept of profit maximization will fail.